Simone's diamond flashed beneath the chandelier, and Adrian Moretti's pen stopped halfway through his signature. The conference room had been silent except for the soft scrape of fountain pen against paper and the low hum of the ventilation system pushing cool air through the Moretti headquarters 40 floors above Manhattan. Amber light spilled across the black walnut table, catching silver cuff links, crystal water glasses, and the polished faces of men who knew better than to interrupt Adrian when he was reading. Simone Carter moved beside him with practiced precision, placing the final folder near his right hand. 7 years had taught her exactly where he preferred it, close enough to reach, never covering his phone. The revised figures are behind the blue divider, Mr. Moretti. Her voice remained level. Adrian turned the page. Then the diamond caught the light again. His eyes dropped to her left hand. Simone immediately reached for another document, but one of the older capos noticed first. Hold on. Vincent Bellini leaned back, leather creaking beneath his shoulders. Is that what I think it is? Simone's fingers became still against the cream-colored paper. Several faces turned toward her. Congratulations are apparently overdue, Vincent said, smiling. Our impossible to impress Miss Carter finally said yes to somebody. A few restrained laughs moved around the table. Simone gave the small professional smile she used whenever powerful men became too interested in her personal life. Thank you, Mr. Bellini. Adrian said nothing. The fountain pen remained suspended between his fingers. A faint trace of cedar from his cologne mixed with fresh espresso cooling beside him. When did this happen? Another man asked. Last night. And you came to work this morning? Vincent chuckled. Moretti really does own your calendar. Simone closed the folder with a soft clap. The quarterly meeting was scheduled 6 weeks ago. Who's the lucky man? Daniel Brooks. Adrian's thumb pressed slowly against the gold edge of his pen. Architect, Simone added when Vincent raised an eyebrow. We've been seeing each other for 11 months. 11 months. Adrian finally lifted his gaze. He could remember negotiations from 5 years earlier down to the seating arrangement, every number attached to the organization's legitimate holdings, every man who had ever lied across a table from him. Yet somehow, for 11 months, the woman who managed his appointments, screened his calls, carried keys to his private office, and knew precisely when silence was more useful than conversation, had been building a life he knew nothing about. Engaged. The single word cut through the room. Simone looked at him. The air conditioning whispered overhead. Somewhere against the windows, an elevator cable gave a distant metallic groan. Yes, sir. Adrian's jaw shifted once. Congratulations. Thank you. Nothing in his voice changed. Nothing in hers did either. That should have ended it. Simone gathered the signed pages, aligned their corners against the table, and stepped away from his chair. Adrian returned his attention to the contract. At least, everyone watching believed he did. His eyes remained on the same sentence while Simone crossed the room. Her heels made 4 measured clicks against the dark marble before the thick door opened. Then one more sound reached him, the quiet turn of the handle as she left. Adrian looked toward the empty place beside his chair. For 7 years, Simone had occupied that space so consistently that he had stopped noticing it. She knew his coffee before he ordered it, moved meetings when his voice became too clipped, remembered which calls he refused after midnight, and could read a room quickly enough to know when he needed everyone gone without being told. He had called that competence, efficiency, loyalty. Outside the conference room, Simone leaned against the cool stone wall for exactly 3 seconds. Her engagement ring felt unfamiliar against her finger. She rotated it once, then stopped herself, straightened her charcoal blazer, and walked toward her desk. Daniel had asked her a simple question the night before, under warm restaurant lights with jazz humming softly behind them. He had asked whether she wanted a future with him. And Simone had said yes, because 7 years was long enough to wait for a man who had never once asked what she wanted. Inside, Adrian signed the wrong line. He stared at his own name, black ink sitting where a date belonged. Nobody spoke. Then his eyes moved to the closed door again, and for the first time that morning, Adrian Moretti wondered why Simone Carter getting engaged felt less like losing a secretary, and more like discovering something had belonged in his life only after someone else had asked her to leave it. 7 years earlier, Simone had learned that Adrian Moretti drank espresso only after the room had already become dangerous. At 11:47 that morning, the machine hissed behind her desk, filling the executive floor with the bitter smell of roasted beans, while pale Manhattan light stretched across the brushed steel elevator doors. Simone set a small white cup on Adrian's desk without asking. He was standing at the window, jacket discarded over a leather chair, phone pressed to his ear. "Move the meeting to Thursday," he said. "No excuses." He ended the call and reached backward for the espresso without looking. His fingers found it exactly where Simone always placed it. "Anything else?" she asked. "Cancel lunch." "Already done." That had been their language for years. No unnecessary words. No explanations. Simone could tell whether Adrian wanted a visitor admitted by the way he set down his cufflinks. She knew that when he loosened his tie before 6 p.m., the evening schedule needed clearing. When his voice dropped instead of rising, she quietly removed junior staff from the next meeting. Adrian never asked how she knew. He simply came to expect that she would. At 5:20, Simone entered his office carrying the next morning's briefing book. The setting sun burned copper against the glass towers outside, and the room smelled faintly of leather, paper, and the cedar cologne that had become so familiar she sometimes noticed its absence before his presence. "Your 8 o'clock has been moved to 8:30, she said. "You haven't eaten since breakfast, so I had dinner sent upstairs." Adrian looked up. "You're leaving?" Simone glanced at the clock. For years, that question would have changed her plans. She would have returned to her desk, opened her laptop beneath the cold fluorescent light, and stayed until his office went dark. Tonight, she closed the briefing book. "Yes." Adrian's eyes dropped briefly to the ring. "Brooks, Daniel is meeting me downstairs. I need the Bellini projections tonight." Simone crossed to his computer, opened the shared drive, and tapped twice on the keyboard. "Uploaded at 4:16. The revised calendar?" She placed her phone beside the keyboard and showed him the confirmation. "Sent at 4:22. Tomorrow's briefing?" Her fingertips rested on the black leather binder between them. "In front of you." Silence settled over the office, broken only by the muted rush of traffic 40 floors below. Adrian leaned back. There was nothing left for him to ask her to do. Simone picked up her purse. The leather strap felt warm from sitting beside the radiator. "Good night, Mr. Moretti." "Simone." She stopped at the door. Adrian's hand remained on the briefing book, but he did not open it. 7 years, he said. "You've never left before me when I was still working." Simone held his gaze. "I never had anyone waiting for me." The elevator chimed outside. She walked away before he answered. Adrian remained behind his desk as her footsteps disappeared. Minutes later, he crossed to the window. Far below, headlights slid along the avenue like white threads. Simone emerged through the revolving doors, charcoal coat buttoned against the evening chill. A man waited beside a dark blue sedan. Daniel Brooks stepped forward when he saw her, took the heavy work bag from her shoulder, and handed her a paper cup. Simone laughed at something he said. Adrian had heard that laugh before, but rarely here. Daniel opened the passenger door. Simone paused before getting in and looked up at the illuminated tower where she had spent 7 years arranging another man's life while postponing her own. Her fingers closed around the warm cup. Then she turned away. Upstairs, Adrian's untouched dinner had gone cold. Down on the street, Simone slid into Daniel's car and switched off her work phone for the first time in 7 years. Daniel Brooks never asked Simone to disappear into his life. He kept making room for hers. The restaurant in Soho was small enough that the saxophone drifting from the speakers reached every table, warm brass notes folding into the clink of silverware and low conversation. Amber pendant lights softened the exposed brick walls, and the air carried roasted garlic, fresh bread, and the faint citrus scent of Simone's tea. Daniel sat across from her with his suit jacket folded over the empty chair beside him. No bodyguards. No phones vibrating against polished walnut. No men waiting for permission to speak. "You're doing it again," he said. Simone looked up. "Doing what?" "Checking the door every time it opens." Her hand stopped beside her water glass. "Occupational habit." Daniel smiled and tore a piece of bread. "Your boss survived almost 2 hours without you. I think Manhattan will make it through dessert." Simone laughed quietly, and this time there was no 40-story window above her, no dark office waiting to pull her back. Daniel reached across the table, not for her hand, but for the leather folder she had brought from work. He closed it gently. "Tomorrow." Simone stared at the folder. 7 years with Adrian had trained her to treat tomorrow like an emergency that simply had not happened yet. Daniel treated tomorrow as something allowed to wait. You know, he said, when we first met, I thought you hated jazz. Why? You spent our entire first date answering emails. That was not my finest evening. You ordered coffee at 9:30 at night. That was definitely Adrian's fault. The name escaped naturally. Daniel's smile remained, but Simone's thumb moved across the edge of her engagement ring. Sorry. For mentioning your boss? For bringing work here. Daniel shook his head. I'm not competing with your job, Simone. He paused. I just want there to be enough of your life left for you. The saxophone shifted into something slower. Simone lowered her eyes to the diamond Daniel had placed on her finger the night before. It was elegant, modest by the standards of the people surrounding Adrian Moretti, but Daniel had chosen it after remembering that she never wore large jewelry at work because it caught against file folders. He had noticed something that small. Adrian could summon her from 3 rooms away without raising his voice. Yet after 7 years, she doubted he knew what music she listened to on the subway home. Daniel reached into his coat and placed a folded sheet of paper beside her plate. Simone opened it. An architectural rendering filled the page. A narrow townhouse with tall windows, bookshelves along one wall, and morning light sketched across a kitchen table. What is this? Nothing purchased. Nothing decided. Daniel tapped the drawing. Just something I've been working on. Simone noticed 2 desks in the upstairs study. 2. You said you wanted to take night classes someday. I figured you'd need somewhere to work. Her fingertips remained on the paper. Months earlier, she had mentioned those classes once while they waited for a cab in the rain. Daniel had remembered. Across town, Adrian sat alone beneath the cold white light of his office, the untouched briefing book open before him. His hand reached toward the intercom button out of habit, then stopped. Simone's desk beyond the glass wall was dark. No lamp, no silhouette, no movement. He picked up his phone and opened her contact. His thumb hovered over call. Then he set the phone face down. At 9:14, Simone stepped outside the restaurant with Daniel. The March air bit through her coat, carrying exhaust, wet pavement, and the sweet smoke of roasted nuts from a street cart. Daniel wrapped her scarf closer around her neck. Come home, he said softly. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. I mean after we're married. Build something with me that doesn't belong to anyone else. Simone looked at the townhouse drawing through the restaurant window, then at the ring on her hand. For 7 years, she had arranged Adrian Moretti's future one meeting at a time. She took Daniel's hand. Yes, she said. I want that. And before they reached the corner, Simone made the decision that would soon force Adrian to understand exactly what he had failed to see. After the wedding, she would leave Moretti headquarters for good. By Wednesday morning, Adrian had rearranged 3 meetings for reasons no one in the building could explain. Simone stood beside his desk beneath the cool glow of recessed lights, reading the new schedule from her tablet while rain tapped softly against the 40-story windows and fresh espresso scented the room. Bellini at 10, council at 11:30, lunch with the property group at 1. Adrian buttoned his charcoal jacket. Move lunch. Simone's finger paused above the screen. To when? 4. You have the finance call at 4. Move that too. She looked up. Mr. Moretti, both meetings were confirmed last week. Then confirm them again. Simone held his gaze for half a second, then tapped the screen. Done. Adrian watched her return to her desk beyond the glass wall. Before the engagement, changing his calendar had meant changing hers. Now, at precisely 5:30, she shut down her computer. The soft click of her laptop closing carried through the quiet executive floor. Adrian stepped from his office. I need you at dinner tonight. Simone slid her tablet into her bag. With the attorneys? Yes. Maria has the complete briefing file. She can cover it. His expression tightened. I asked for you. Simone checked her watch. And I already have plans. Adrian's eyes went to the diamond. Again, with Brooks. It was not a question. Yes. The elevator doors opened with a polished chime. Simone stepped inside. Adrian could have ordered her to stay. 7 years earlier, she would have stayed before he finished the sentence. Instead, he watched the stainless steel doors close between them. That evening, the private dining room felt strangely incomplete. Candlelight flickered against dark mahogany paneling. Expensive bourbon burned warm in Adrian's throat, while silverware clicked against porcelain around him. Maria answered every question correctly. The meeting proceeded exactly as scheduled. Adrian hated every minute of it. At 8:06, he checked his phone. No message from Simone. At 8:19, he checked again. Nothing. By Friday, the absence had become measurable. His espresso arrived 10 minutes later because Simone no longer stayed past her shift to prepare the next morning's instructions. A document he wanted was filed correctly, but not placed beneath his hand before he asked. His driver waited 30 seconds longer because nobody had quietly warned the lobby he was coming down. Nothing was wrong. That was the problem. The entire machine still worked, but the invisible precision Simone had built around him was disappearing piece by piece. At 5:34 Friday evening, Adrian descended to the lobby earlier than planned. Golden light from the enormous brass fixtures spilled across the marble floor, mixing with the cold draft each time the revolving doors turned. Then he saw her. Simone stood near the entrance wearing the same charcoal coat, but her posture was different outside the executive floor, shoulders loose, phone tucked away, a smile already forming. Daniel Brooks walked in carrying 2 coffees. "One decaf," he said, handing her the smaller cup. "Because apparently someone thinks sleep is useful." Simone laughed. Daniel took her work bag from her shoulder without being asked. Adrian stopped beside a stone column. People moved around him, shoes striking marble, security radios murmuring near the reception desk, but his attention stayed fixed on Daniel's hand settling lightly at Simone's back as they approached the doors. Daniel leaned down and kissed her forehead. Simone closed her eyes for one brief second. Adrian's fingers tightened around his phone. 7 years of mornings, midnight calls, hospital corridors, impossible schedules. 7 years in which Simone had always turned toward him when he needed something. Now she walked toward another man without looking back. "Mr. Moretti?" his driver called from the curb. Adrian didn't move. Simone and Daniel disappeared through the revolving doors. Outside, Daniel opened the passenger door of the dark blue sedan, and Simone slipped inside. Adrian finally looked down at his phone. Her calendar was still synchronized with his. Monday through Friday, every hour arranged around Moretti business. But Saturday carried one new entry in Simone's personal availability block. Engagement dinner, 7 p.m. Adrian stared at those 3 words until the screen dimmed beneath his thumb. Then he turned toward his security chief. "Clear my Saturday night." The man hesitated. "All of it." Adrian looked through the glass as Daniel's blue sedan disappeared into Manhattan traffic. "All of it." Adrian found the letter because Simone had finally stopped arranging his world before he could ask. Saturday afternoon, Moretti headquarters stood nearly empty, the executive floor washed in gray light, while the ventilation system breathed cool air through silent corridors. Adrian had canceled his entire evening, yet he had not called Simone. Instead, he sat behind his black walnut desk with the Bellini projections open before him, reading the same column twice. At 4:18, he reached for a financial file Simone had archived years earlier. The digital copy was incomplete. He crossed the glass-walled office toward her desk. Her chair was pushed neatly beneath it, the faint scent of her citrus hand cream lingering near the keyboard. Adrian opened the upper drawer. Pens, business cards, spare charging cables. The second contained expense files. He pulled the third. Locked. He stared at it, then reached beneath the desk for the emergency key every executive workstation carried. The lock clicked sharply in the quiet room. Inside lay old employment documents tied with a black elastic band. Adrian removed them, searching for the missing financial record. A cream envelope slipped free and landed against the hardwood floor. His name was written across it. Adrian Moretti. Simone's handwriting. He crouched, picked it up, and noticed the date in the upper corner. 3 years earlier. The paper felt dry and slightly rough between his fingers. He unfolded it beneath the cold desk lamp. It was a resignation letter. Simone had written that she appreciated her years with Moretti Holdings, but needed to pursue a life beyond the executive office. Professional, controlled, almost sterile. Then Adrian saw the lines beneath the formal signature, written in blue ink and crossed through so heavily the paper had nearly torn. He tilted the page toward the light. "I have to leave before loving you costs me the part of myself I still own." Adrian stopped breathing for a beat. The building hummed around him. Far below, a horn sounded on Madison Avenue, distant and thin behind 2 inches of glass. He read the sentence again, then again. 3 years ago. Adrian lowered himself into Simone's chair. Suddenly, moments he had filed away as loyalty returned with different edges. The night he had spent 12 hours in a private hospital after being injured in a car accident, Simone had remained in the corridor long after every business matter was settled. He remembered opening his eyes near dawn and seeing her asleep upright beneath harsh fluorescent lights, her coat folded beneath her head. He had told himself she stayed because she was responsible. The winter his schedule collapsed under negotiations. Coffee had appeared beside him at midnight with a handwritten note. Eat something before the 1 o'clock call. He had called that efficiency. Every birthday she remembered, but never celebrated unless he allowed it. Every silence she understood. Every time she had stepped backward when another woman entered his office. Adrian looked at the diamond-shaped indentation the ring had left in his memory from Monday morning. Simone had loved him. Not yesterday. Not after Daniel. For years. And he had learned it only when another man had already asked her to become his wife. His phone vibrated across her desk. A calendar notification illuminated the screen. Simone Carter unavailable. Engagement dinner, 7 p.m. 2 hours and 31 minutes. Adrian stood so quickly the chair rolled backward and struck the cabinet. He folded the letter once, then stopped. It was not his. He smoothed it flat, returned it to the envelope, and placed it exactly where he had found it. Then he closed the drawer but did not lock it. At 4:32, he called Simone. She answered after the fourth ring. Behind her voice came the muffled sound of restaurant staff arranging glassware and Daniel speaking somewhere nearby. Mr. Moretti? Adrian looked at the closed drawer. His next words came without command, without the cold certainty that usually made men obey. Simone, I need to speak with you. A pause. I'm busy tonight. I know. Another pause. Adrian's hand tightened around the phone. Tomorrow morning. My office. Not as my secretary. Simone said nothing. There's something I should have understood 3 years ago, he said. This time, the silence on the line changed. What did you find, Adrian? It was the first time in 7 years she had used his first name. He closed his eyes. Your resignation letter. The restaurant sounds behind her seemed to vanish. When Simone finally answered, her voice was barely above a whisper. Then tomorrow morning, you're going to hear why I never gave it to you. Simone entered Adrian's office Sunday morning and closed the door herself. Pale sunlight cut across the black walnut desk, sharpening every edge of the room, while the ventilation system sent a cool current against her charcoal coat. Adrian stood near the windows with 2 untouched coffees behind him. No security detail waited outside. No folders covered the desk. Only the cream envelope rested between them. Simone removed her gloves slowly. The diamond on her left hand caught the light. You had no right to open that drawer. Adrian turned. You're right. The answer stopped her. He crossed the room, placed the emergency key beside the envelope, and pushed both toward her. I was looking for an archived file. I found something that wasn't mine to read. Simone picked up the letter. The paper made a dry whisper as she folded it once and slipped it into her purse. 3 years, Adrian said. You wrote that 3 years ago. Yes. Why didn't you leave? Simone walked toward the window. 40 floors below, Sunday traffic moved through Manhattan in thin streams, horns softened by thick glass. Because every time I decided to go, something happened. She counted without looking at him. A negotiation. A crisis. A week when you barely slept. A morning when you walked in injured and still tried to hold 3 meetings. Adrian's jaw tightened. You stayed because of me. I stayed because I kept telling myself one more week wouldn't matter. Her fingers closed around the strap of her purse. Then 1 week became another year. Adrian stepped closer, stopping several feet away. You loved me. Simone finally turned. Yes. The word landed without decoration. The refrigerator beneath the sideboard clicked off, leaving the room so quiet Adrian could hear the second hand of the brass clock near the bookshelves. For how long? Long enough that I stopped counting. His eyes dropped briefly to her ring. And Brooks knows. Daniel knows I spent too much of my life working. He doesn't know I spent part of it waiting for you. Adrian moved to the desk and braced both hands against the walnut surface. Why didn't you tell me? Simone gave a small breath that carried no laughter. Tell you what, that I love the man who signed my paycheck? The man whose name made entire rooms change their voices. Adrian straightened. I would never have used that against you. That isn't the point. Simone crossed the space between them and placed her employee badge on the desk. Plastic touched wood with a quiet click. You had the power to promote me, fire me, change my hours, change my income. You could ask me to stay until midnight, and I stayed. How was I supposed to stand here and ask whether anything you gave me afterward was love or authority? Adrian looked at the badge, then at her. Simone, Daniel asked me what I wanted. Her voice remained low. You only ever asked what you needed. The clock ticked once. Twice. Adrian's hand slowly left the desk. I didn't know. I know. That answer struck harder than accusation. Simone picked up the untouched coffee meant for her, felt the warmth through the paper cup, then set it back down. That's why I never blamed you. Adrian walked around the desk. And now I'm engaged. That isn't what I asked. Simone's eyes sharpened. Then ask the question you actually brought me here to answer. He stopped. For years, Adrian Moretti had built his life around never speaking before he knew exactly what his words would accomplish. Now his next sentence came rougher than anything Simone had heard from him in a boardroom. Do you still love me? Her fingers tightened around her gloves. She could have protected him. She could have protected herself. Instead, Simone met his eyes. Yes. Adrian took one step toward her. Simone immediately raised her hand, the diamond between them. But that does not mean you get to claim me now. He froze. You found out too late, Adrian. She lifted her employee badge from the desk, looked at it for a moment, then placed it back in front of him. And if you're about to ask me not to marry Daniel, then first you're going to have to understand why I can't answer that question while I still work for you. Adrian looked at Simone's employee badge between them, and for once, he did not reach for what she was offering back. Morning light had climbed higher across the office, warming the edge of the walnut desk while the air conditioning whispered through the ceiling vents. The untouched coffee had gone lukewarm. Simone stood with her coat still buttoned, the faint scent of citrus following her as she stepped away from the desk. You said I would have to understand, Adrian said. I do now. Simone's hand closed around her purse strap. Do you? Adrian moved toward her, then deliberately stopped several feet away. I don't want you to marry him. The words came without the measured calm he used in negotiations. I saw you with Brooks downstairs. I watched you leave with him, and I spent the rest of that night trying to convince myself I was angry because I was losing the best secretary I've ever had. Simone said nothing. Then I found that letter. Adrian's voice dropped, and every memory I had of you changed. Her ring flashed as she folded her arms. That still doesn't give you the right to ask me to stay. I know. You could make one call and change Daniel's career. You could change mine. You could make this very difficult for both of us without ever raising your voice. Adrian's eyes narrowed. I would never touch his career. I believe you. Simone took her badge from the desk and held it between two fingers. But I shouldn't have to rely on believing that. The plastic card swung once from its black lanyard. If you tell me you want me while I'm still your employee, there will always be a question underneath it. Did I choose you? Or did 7 years of answering to you teach me how to say yes? Adrian's mouth opened. Simone placed the badge in his palm. This time, she did not take it back. I resign. The refrigerator clicked beneath the sideboard. A siren passed far below, muted by the thick glass. Adrian stared at the photograph printed on the badge, the same composed face that had greeted him every morning for 7 years. Effective when? Now. You're giving me no notice. Maria knows the schedule. The files are indexed. Your quarterly calendar is finished through June. Simone removed a small brass key from her purse and set it beside his hand. Your private office key. Another object followed. The black company phone. Then the building access card. Each landed with a different sound against the wood. 7 years reduced to 3 small pieces on a desk. Adrian's fingers closed around the badge. If I refuse the resignation? Simone looked directly at him. Then you prove my point. The answer left no room for command. Adrian had ended negotiations with a glance. Men twice Simone's size lowered their voices when he entered a room. Yet the woman standing before him had taken the only weapon he possessed against this moment, authority, and made using it impossible. His hand slowly opened. He placed the badge down. Accepted. Simone's shoulders lowered by barely an inch. She turned toward the door. Simone. Her hand stopped on the cool metal handle. When you walk out of here, Adrian said, you don't work for me anymore. That's the idea. Then when I speak to you again, I won't be speaking as your boss. Simone turned. Adrian removed his phone from his pocket, placed it beside her badge, and stepped away from the desk as if distance itself were part of the promise. No orders. No leverage. No Moretti name behind the question. Her fingers remained around the handle. And what question is that? Adrian looked at the diamond on her hand, then back into her eyes. Whether 7 years of silence means I lost my chance before I even knew I wanted one. Simone opened the door. Cool corridor air moved into the office, carrying the clean scent of polished stone. That, she said, is finally a question I'll be free to answer. Then she walked out, leaving Adrian Moretti standing alone with her badge in his hand, and no power left over her except whatever truth he was willing to offer next. By Monday afternoon, Adrian had signed away every professional reason Simone might ever have to wonder why he came looking for her. The final separation agreement lay beneath the warm brass lamp in his office, its cream pages carrying her full salary through the month, 7 years of earned performance bonuses, and every benefit already owed to her. Nothing more, nothing conditional. The pen scratched once across the signature line. Adrian closed it and slid the document toward corporate counsel. No non-compete. The attorney adjusted his glasses. Her contract allows, remove it. And the confidentiality provisions? Only the standard legal obligations. Nothing that interferes with her career. Adrian's voice stayed quiet. Rain ticked against the windows while bitter espresso cooled untouched beside his hand. She leaves free. 20 minutes later, Simone received the documents electronically. She was sitting at her kitchen table in Queens, sunlight reflecting from the wet fire escape outside, when her laptop chimed. She opened the agreement and read every page twice. No hidden condition, no demand to return, no favor disguised as generosity. Just what she had earned, followed by Adrian Moretti's signature. Simone touched the trackpad, then withdrew her hand. Her engagement ring clicked softly against the ceramic coffee mug. At 6:10 that evening, someone knocked. Simone looked through the peephole and stopped. Adrian stood alone in the hallway. No security chief. No driver waiting behind him. No tailored overcoat thrown over someone else's arm. Just Adrian in a dark suit. Rain beaded across his shoulders, holding nothing. Simone opened the door, but did not step aside. The hallway smelled of old radiator heat, and someone's dinner cooking 2 apartments away. How did you know where I live? It was in your employment records. Adrian paused. If that makes this another abuse of my position, I'll leave. Simone studied him. Then she stepped into the hallway and closed the apartment door behind her. Say what you came to say. Adrian nodded once. I could have gone to Brooks. Her expression changed. Don't. I didn't. He kept both hands visible at his sides. I could have shown up at your engagement dinner. I didn't do that either. A radiator pipe knocked behind the wall. Simone folded her arms. You want credit for behaving like an adult? No, Adrian's answer came immediately. I want you to know I finally understand that this isn't a negotiation. Simone said nothing. Adrian drew a slow breath. For 7 years, I thought your presence was part of the structure of my life. The calendar, the office, the coffee beside my hand. I never asked what any of it cost you because I never imagined there would be a morning when you weren't there. His voice lowered. Then I saw that ring. Simone's thumb touched the diamond. And suddenly you wanted what someone else had. At first, maybe that's what I told myself. Adrian stepped no closer. Then I read your letter and realized the unbearable part wasn't that Brooks had you. It was that you had loved me while standing 3 feet away, and I had been too accustomed to being served to recognize I was being cared for. Simone's arms slowly lowered. Adrian, you don't owe me an answer tonight. Then why are you here? He looked directly at her. Because now there is no paycheck between us. No office key. No schedule I control. If you marry Daniel, I will not interfere. I will never touch his career, yours, or anything you build together. The hallway fell quiet except for rain whispering against the stairwell window. But if any part of you is choosing him because he feels safer than wanting me ever did, then I'm asking you to make that choice again, without me standing above you. Simone's fingers curled against her palm. And if I still choose Daniel? Adrian's jaw shifted once. Then I disappear from this part of your life. For 7 years, Simone had waited for Adrian Moretti to see her. Now he stood in an ordinary hallway without his men, his desk, or his authority, offering her the one thing his power had never given her, an exit. Simone looked at the ring Daniel had placed on her finger. Then she met Adrian's eyes. I need to speak to Daniel. Adrian nodded. Then speak to him. He turned toward the stairs. Adrian. He stopped. Simone remained beside her closed apartment door, one hand wrapped around the diamond. If I come back to you after that conversation, it won't be because you finally chose me. Adrian waited. It'll be because I chose you. For the first time, he lowered his head as though receiving terms from someone whose answer he had no power to change. That, he said quietly, is the only answer I want. Daniel understood before Simone finished the sentence, because the ring was already resting on the table between them. The small Brooklyn cafe smelled of dark coffee and toasted cinnamon. An afternoon sunlight fell through the front window in long amber rectangles, catching the diamond beside Daniel's untouched cup. Simone kept both hands around her mug. Without the ring, her left hand looked strangely bare. I never meant to use you, she said. Daniel traced one finger along the ceramic rim. I know. You gave me everything I said I wanted. That's not the same as being the person you want it with. Simone lowered her eyes. A spoon struck porcelain behind the counter. Steam hissed from the espresso machine. I thought choosing you meant I was finally choosing myself. Daniel looked at the ring, then gently pushed it toward her. And now? Simone didn't reach for it. Now I know choosing myself means telling you the truth, even when the truth makes me look terrible. Daniel gave a small, tired smile. You don't look terrible. He paused. You look like someone who spent 7 years trying to stop loving a man who never noticed. Simone's fingers tightened around the warm mug. He notices now. That's not what I asked. She looked up. Daniel held her gaze. If Adrian Moretti had never come to your apartment, would you have married me? The answer waited in the silence between them. Simone finally shook her head. I would have tried. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Then he picked up the ring and slipped it into his coat pocket. Then I'm glad we figured that out before the wedding. Simone reached across the table, but stopped short of touching his hand. Daniel, I am sorry. I know. He stood, pulled on his coat, and looked at her once more. Don't choose him because you waited 7 years. Choose him only if the man standing in front of you now deserves what the man behind that desk never did. 2 weeks passed before Simone contacted Adrian. No late-night calls. No Moretti car outside her building. No messages asking for an answer. She started interviewing for executive operations positions downtown and enrolled in the night course she had postponed twice. Then, on a clear Thursday evening, she walked into a quiet Italian restaurant in Manhattan where Adrian sat alone at a corner table. Warm candlelight moved across white linen. Somewhere near the bar, a piano played softly beneath the murmur of dinner conversation. Adrian stood when he saw her. His eyes went immediately to her left hand. No diamond. He did not smile. Not yet. Simone. Adrian. He pulled out the chair opposite him. She remained standing. I ended the engagement. Adrian's fingers stopped against the chair back. Because of me? Because Daniel deserved a woman who could choose him without comparing his kindness to someone else's absence. Adrian absorbed that without moving. And why are you here? Simone looked around the table. No briefing books. No company phone. No coffee waiting exactly where he wanted it. For the first time in 7 years, nothing between them belonged to work. You said if I came back, the choice would be mine. It still is. Adrian stepped away from the chair. If you tell me to leave tonight, I leave. Simone studied the man who once needed only a glance to rearrange rooms. Now he waited for permission to remain in one. Ask me. His brow tightened slightly. Ask you what? The question you never had to ask when I worked for you. Adrian understood. The faintest smile touched his face, then disappeared beneath something quieter. Simone Carter, would you have dinner with me? She let him wait one heartbeat. Ask me again. Adrian's smile returned. Would you have dinner with me? Yes. Simone sat. Adrian took the chair across from her rather than beside her. Months later, when Simone began her new job and Adrian learned that loving her meant asking instead of assuming, they returned to that same restaurant. Their lives did not become simple, and Adrian did not become a different man overnight. But he never again confused loyalty with ownership, and Simone never again mistook waiting for devotion. 7 years after she had first fallen silently in love with him, Adrian finally reached across a table, not to summon his secretary, not to claim the woman who once waited for him, but to offer his open hand to an equal. Simone looked at it, smiled, and placed her hand in his. He had discovered her love on the day she promised herself to another man, but he earned her love only when he learned that her heart had never been his to command.